Well, hello out there, planet Earth, and happy Friday. Lashana Tova to my Jewish brethren as we are getting ready to bring in the new year, 5784. That makes me feel nice and young. It's Friday, and it's always Friday with me, Stephen Fry, your SMB guy. ICYMI, or in case you missed it, SMB stands for Small and Medium Sized Business. For the last 20 years, I've been a consultant for SMBs, a voice and a sounding board for our business leaders, advocating on their behalf, their employees as well. I believe very strongly, everyone, in sharing stories, providing perspective, and creating connection. One would say those are my superpowers. So every single Friday, you can find me right here on talkradio.nyc doing just that, lending what's left of my mind and my voice to this radio show where I interview SMB leaders and their trusted advisors. One thing I've noticed consistently over the years is that some of the best thought leadership out there for the SMBs actually happens on Friday, just about the time we feel the freedom of the weekend coming. However, we're also anxious to start the weekend. These crucial pearls of wisdom, they're often overlooked, they're forgotten in favor of our fun activities and our freedom from work. Here on the show, we take advantage of that weekend freedom and clarity, and we discuss popular topics that are on the minds of business leaders, as well as the folks who guide them in the right direction. Once again, people, the name of the show, not just a play on words, though I do love the occasional play on words. My last name actually means free in German, so just a little bit of the method behind my madness. It's going to be a big weekend of family. We're going to my mother-in-law's house tonight. Then everyone is coming over to destroy my house tomorrow, which, given all the money I just spent in upgrading my house over the summer, I'm very excited about that. Even though it probably makes me a bad Jew, I have softball playoffs on Sunday along with my wife's birthday. So I'm very focused on softball at the moment. Got some practice in with my team last night, wearing the team uniform right here. Just quick shout out to my coach, Frank LaRocca. He's a matrimonial attorney and judge who's actually looking for his third championship in a row. One of these days, hope to have him on the show as well. Thanks, Frank. I appreciate the swag. He always has the absolute best swag in the league. And let's go. Time to make it a three-peat. I've been thinking about softball a lot as of late, in addition to family, because my 11-year-old daughter recently started playing, and I've been coaching her and her teammates however I can, whenever I have time. I got to say, it's a pleasure going somewhere besides the dance studio these days. But since family's been on my mind quite a bit lately, especially after we just got back from our vacation to Hilton Head Island, I'm about to spend the weekend with a bunch of them. I thought it would be an appropriate time to discuss balancing business and family. Most SMBs, they want to navigate the challenges of doing business with family, especially if it's a family-run business, drive some sustainable growth, and build a business that you can pass down or sell at some point that protects your legacy and your family. To do that, you have to be able to define your life, business, and retirement goals with an unbiased viewpoint and build an actionable business strategy to achieve them. This can be really tough work to do by yourself, especially when you're involved in every little thing that happens. You know, we've discussed it many times on the show. The closer you are to something, the harder it can be to explain it to somebody else. That's where my special guest comes in. He and his team empower SMB owners to navigate the complexities of doing business with family, specializing in the family dynamics, optimizing business governance, fostering that growth, improving your processes. You guys know I love process before products, and designing succession and exit plans that safeguard the legacy and the family. Talk is cheap. We know that. We're on talkradio.nyc. The goal here is not for this to just be talk. We want everyone to use the insight on the business landscape and create more impact on Monday morning. It's far too often that the businesses I work with, they're focused on some type of product, some new app, some chat GPT that's going to solve all of their problems, the shiny new mousetrap. One consistent thing I see out there, these products, they change every day in everything that we do. It doesn't even matter if you're talking about business. There's no substitute for surrounding yourself with the right people first and keeping the focus on a good process that will help you achieve your goals. If you do that, the right products will be there when you need them. They change every hour of every day. Everything begins and ends with people. So, in the spirit of surrounding yourself with the right people, I'm very excited for this conversation. I've been looking forward to it for some time. Our special guest today is Jeremy Stevenson, founder at iBridge Global Partners. So I don't know, for some reason that makes me think of Prestige Worldwide from Step Brothers, but I love it, Jeremy. So Jeremy helps family business owners and their families navigate the intricate web of personal and organizational challenges while paving the way for seamless business transition, which will obviously in turn affect wealth preservation, legacy protection, and enduring long-lasting commitments. As a seasoned business strategist, he offers a unique blend of consulting, entrepreneurial, and family business experience. He co founded and sold a $1 billion company, has consulted with over 100 plus family businesses, was a board member and investor at a family office that invested in family businesses, ran two family businesses, and worked for another. So he knows what family business sort of looks like. Outside of business, he mentors military veterans, advocates for animal welfare, and is a car, thank you, I love cars, and bourbon enthusiast. I also love bourbon. Thursday nights more, so Friday night's martini night. And he says he also likes to try to play golf. I've been trying to play golf for about 35 years now, and I'm still trying. It's not working out so well. Jeremy routinely speaks on everything family business, frequently writes content for LinkedIn, professional journals, and is on the advisory committee for a global strategic partner. His specialties include conflict resolution, managing family dynamics, once again, establishing effective family business governments, strategic planning for growth, expansion, and legacy preservation, organizational professionalization and streamlining, designing businesses for transition, sellable asset, succession, family asset, whatever your flavor, developing the next generation of leaders, business turnarounds, or post-acquisition integration. He does have a degree from the Harvard Business School, so he may be one of the smarter cookies I've had on the show. I'm just kidding. I don't want to pump up your ego too badly, but plenty of brilliant people have been out here, dropped out of college. So, if you're a family business owner or you're worried about your business's sustainable growth, success, and dynamics destroying the family legacy, this is who you need to speak to. He's the man, and like me, enjoys the occasional bourbon. This is the guy you got to go to. We're going to talk about my questions around movies, TV, and music. I would never deprive you guys of that. Joining us today from his home base on the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky. I can't wait to come visit you in person. Jeremy, welcome to Always Friday, my friend. Great to see you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I appreciate you having me here, and I appreciate you letting me talk to your audience.
Jeremy, like I said, Thursday's usually my whiskey night and Friday's martini night, so I'm glad we're chatting while there's still some bourbon in my system. This is actually distilled 20 minutes from my house. I know you have plenty of distilleries down by you, but I got to get you up here one day so you can actually come hang out with some of us in the Northeast. But this is a big passion of yours. You have a crazy amount of experience. You got to share your travels with the audience. Tell us a little bit how you got where you are today.
So I worked for the career story, I guess. My claim to fame is that I paid the rent for Colgate-Palmolive's Park Avenue headquarters for an internship back in the day for summer. But yeah, then I came back and I was a business analyst for a big corporate. So, turning raw data into usable information for the CFO of Medicare for Humana Insurance. Left there, went to a professional service firm, did a little bit of about a year or so of business taxes. And then I left there and went to a big consultancy firm essentially and traveled up and down the eastern half of the United States. And that was from 2007 to 2011. So the macroeconomic environment wasn't very friendly. So a lot of the companies, a lot of it was bankruptcy prep, a lot of it was exit prep. And then the other side of it was they had cash in the bank and they wanted to be able to thrive and emerge from the downturn in the best case possible. So, we broke the business down, improved it, figured out how to achieve their goals, and then designed it into whatever transition plan they wanted. Left there, joined the fintech startup, as you mentioned, and that was kind of a back of the napkin idea. And, long story short, we raised a lot of money and ended up putting a company together, had an office in New York, had an office here, split the time between the two cities, built it up and sold it to Nationwide in 2017 and, helped them build out their retail financial services segment. And while I was there, I had some contacts from the old consulting days that reached out and said, hey, can you help us increase, improve revenue, profitability, streamline something, reduce cost, and aka strategy consulting, basically. So yeah, I created iBridge Global Partners, and that was kind of the start of it. Now, predating the internships and all that stuff to back up to the initial days, in high school, I worked for a family business that was dysfunctional. You had the first generation, the founding generation yelling at the son or the second generation on a weekly basis saying, get rid of the computers. We're going to go back to running it on Post-it notes. And then in college, before the internships, I ran a couple of my parents' family businesses, and one of them was a case study in bad partnership. So, that was, I knew that was not going to work out even at that young age. And I told my dad that, and whatever, it still didn't work out. And I guess I was right. I don't think he ever told me I was right on that one. And the other one worked out because, there was no partnerships involved, and it was a good idea, I guess. So it worked out, and then I continued on the course that I just mentioned.
How young were you when you told your father that?
I was 19.
I have a similar story from when I was 14. My parents had partner. They invested in a franchise back in the early 90s. It was one of those children's playgrounds, indoor children's playgrounds like Discovery Zone, whatnot. And Yeah, it's seeing things like that from such an early age was actually very impactful. More so these days than I ever really thought about. Just see, like I know what how much do you know when you're 14, but you can see what works and what's not going to work.
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't even know what a family business was when I was working for the other one. And then, of course, you get into, running a couple of them essentially, and knowing one of them on a daily basis is not doing too well just because of the partner dynamics essentially. And then you get into the other side of it, and yeah, the other one's working out pretty well. And you look at the differential in it, and it's like, well, this happened in this one, this didn't happen in this one. Okay, that's kind of an identifiable problem. But yeah, I was pretty young when I told my dad it wasn't going to work. He put up all the capital for the business. The other individual didn't put up anything. So
sounds a little skewed already.
Yeah, just knew from the start that it was not looking too good, even at a young age, with very little knowledge in that space.
So, as you hear my rhetoric, right, one thing that I see a lot with small, medium-sized businesses is they always have it in their mind that there's some type of product, service, tech, app, whatever it is that they all of a sudden buy or invest in, or somebody sells them real hardcore on, and they try to buy it and kind of half-ass implement it a little bit, and they just think that it's going to be an overnight waving of a magic wand. And I feel like I have yet to really see that work out there. And if it did work, it was totally a happy accident. Do you agree? Do you see the same?
Yeah, there is no magic wand. I mean, time is your best friend in a lot of these. Preparation, obviously, it takes work, it takes open-mindedness, it takes acceptance of change and being adaptable. Because what you've done is amazing, but it's going to take something different to get you to that next level of success, and or get you to the next evolution of the journey, which means transition. You got to figure out what you're going to do next. But continuing to come to the office and work 80 hours a week is probably not going to be the idea. Honestly, that's why a lot of owners fall into, I'm just going to work until I fall down at my desk, so to speak.
Yeah, well, no matter what, we know bourbon will be involved, no matter how much planning there is. But I do see the same. A lot of times, the small, medium-sized business owners, family business owners, especially if the next generation is not planning to go into the family business, I see them with the attitude of the business is the retirement plan. I'm just going to work until the day I die, and we'll sell the business at that point. Where I think you and I can attest to the idea, as I've spoken about it many times on the show about succession planning. A good succession plan starts years in advance.
Yeah, no, the underestimation of how long it takes to build a company into what you're going to transition out of, whether or not you're creating a sellable asset or you're creating a succession plan. You've got to train somebody. You got to figure out who's going to take over. Do they want to take over? And then, to your point, sense of duty, a lot of times of creating a family asset is almost a better avenue in a lot of different ways, meaning the family oversees it, they govern it, but they don't operate it on a daily basis.
Without a doubt. We got to take a quick break, but we will be right back with Jeremy Stevenson, founder at iBridge Global Partners. Stay with us. Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
What really drives success in business? Introducing Intangify, the show that explores the intangible assets that create value and growth. I'm Matthew Asbell, your host and an attorney focused on innovation. Join me Fridays at noon Eastern to discover how innovation, culture, and other intangibles shape thriving companies, from startups to established businesses. We'll share strategies to unleash your business's true potential. Tune in live on talkradio.nyc Fridays at noon Eastern and Intangify your business today.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Friday. It's always Friday. And it's me, your one and only Stephen Fry, the SMB guy. We are chatting with my friend Jeremy Stevenson down on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, founder of iBridge Global Partners. Jeremy, before we kick off the method segment of the show, the method behind the science behind what you do, I do like to sit out by my fire pit and just give a quick perspective for the moment, which I feel like I haven't been able to sit out by at all for the last 2 months. It's been too damn hot, and we finally got that blast of like fall 60-degree air this morning. I was like, I just want to sit out by the fire pit all weekend this weekend. But it is Rosh Hashanah weekend. We are celebrating new beginnings, the beginning of a new year. I saw an article or a blog that you wrote a while ago that talked about community and bourbon. I don't know if that rings a bell with you from way back when, but what the hell does bourbon and community have in common? I thought this was a fun way to kick this off. Since I'm going to be talking about almost 6,000 years of Jewish history this weekend, 4,000-year history of bourbon in 6 easy steps. The 2000s BC era, the Mesopotamians founded the process of distillation and used it to create perfumes. 1400s, distillation was used to make the first product called whiskey in Ireland. 1600s, distillation was brought to the US. 1700s, George Washington was a distiller and produced about 300,000 barrels at Mount Vernon. Good man. To 1920, prohibition was enacted. So what does this have to do with community? Everything. But the point of this is not bourbon, unfortunately. Communities are built around all kinds of interests: cars, kids, sports, hobbies. That is where the know, like, trust factor starts. And most of you folks have heard me say that over time. In order to do business with somebody, you need to like them, trust them, and think they know what they're talking about. So love that. Then it sometimes spills over into business deals, finding your next job or a new dentist, doctor, plumber, etc. Jeremy has spoken about the importance of community before and has done presentations and has been asked about it. The story he used was prohibition was meant to reduce alcohol-related social issues, but it created the speakeasy, one of my favorite concepts ever. These were super secret clubs that used nonsensical phrases to gain access. They centered around having fun, lubricated with a side of liquor. Each had their own community. People risked jail time to hang out with friends, enjoy illegal drinks, and lively entertainment, which you can rest assured will be part of my family tolerance plan this weekend. So being part of communities is so important. That's where all the good stuff starts. So think about this as you guys head out for the Rosh Hashanah weekend once again. Jeremy, this is the method part of the show, the science behind what you do. Give us a little bit of insight as to exactly what you do, how you're going about doing it, and how you're going to market for it. Lay it on us, brother.
Yeah, no, everything does come out of community. Absolutely. That's how we build relationships in essence. So, I mean, we gather around some common phrase, or some commonality. But anyway, how I do what I do, I mean, I have a fairly simplistic 5-step process, but everything starts with a conversation, basically. I mean, this is a team sport. Somebody introduces somebody to somebody because they have a challenge and they hear it. The family's having challenges, the business is having challenges. I'm trying to figure out how to make it out of the business. The discussion starts from there, essentially. And, I mean, the process starts, from my process perspective, starts with what's your vision, goals, and timeline. I mean, you've got to know where you're going, just like a road trip, before you can figure out how to get there. And, a lot of times that conversation can take a year sometimes. Yep. I mean, because you've got owners that are dealing with their own retirement challenges. I mean, they're going to have to hand the keys over to either the next generation or somebody outside or something anyway. And, if they've built the business or they inherited the business, put everything they have into it, that takes some, takes getting over. It's a hurdle to overcome, I guess. And then the other side of it is, if it is a succession, they have to start thinking about who's going to take over the business, who has the capabilities, who has the desire to take over the business. I mean, just because they have children doesn't mean that they want to build widgets for the next 30 years of their life or what have you. That is a challenge. And then, of course, if you get into multiple children scenarios, okay, who gets the business or what shares? How do you break it up? So, I mean, that is a very deep conversation, but yeah. And then you can start to figure out, okay, we've got a plan on where we're headed. We're going to create a sellable asset. And this is written in pencil, by the way, at the early stages. You don't have to write it in pen. I mean, there's going to be some erasing and there's going to be some detours, but you got to have an idea. I mean, I want to go to Hilton Head, or I want to go to South Carolina. And then you start to figure out, okay, I'm going to go to Hilton Head, or I'm going to go to Charleston. So, it's a process of elimination to some extent.
I think you make a very important point there, actually. The fact that this conversation is ever evolving and that it is written in pencil, because I feel like a lot of times, especially family run businesses, they look back with the hindsight and they think everything is not only in pen, but it's like etched in stone. And, especially when you're trying to plan, the succession part of things, like that conversation can take years. I have one that I'm talking to for 3 years now, and it's a little bit different than it was in the beginning. So without a doubt.
Yeah, you get in. I mean, legacy obviously means a lot to most of the owners. I mean, most of the owners that I talk to are looking to pass their business on in some form or fashion. They're looking to keep it or retain it in the family in some fashion anyway. Sell is sometimes the right answer. Okay, that's fine. But that's usually not the first conversation that takes place, And so, I mean, anyway, yeah, you step into that and then you have to explain that it is a team sport. I'm not a jack of all trades. If you hire, if you need brain surgery, you hire a brain surgeon. I'm good at getting families on the same page, focused, collaborative, harmonious dynamics, essentially. And then you figure out how to build the business into whatever they're going to transition out of. So, that means growing the business organically into whatever and building it into either a sellable asset, succession roadmap, and or wealth generating asset for the family. Lots of different things, but you need other people at the table, essentially other professionals. So that's financial advisors, corporate bankers, they're going to be on the team, tax mitigation individuals, tax accountants, I guess, and estate and trust attorneys. I mean, it's not just me sitting there, essentially. You can think of it as a round table building out the mini board of directors, as I commonly refer to it as. But yeah, and then you build that out. And I mean, obviously owners have some of these individuals on their team, so to speak, when we step in the door. That's fine. I mean, we'll figure out what we need along the way, but it is not a solo sport by any stretch of the imagination. And it doesn't happen quickly, because you don't want it to happen quickly, because this is generally the biggest journey of these individuals' lives. I mean, granted, they've built something successful. My advice is always, let's figure out how to utilize it so you can live your life. And that's part of the process as well, and we can get to that in a second. But yeah, the third element is getting into the business aspect to it. So, I mean, you step into it and you do an assessment on where the weak links are and what areas need to be addressed. To your love, is systems and processes actually evident? Do they exist? Do they need to be improved so that you can do rinse and repeat? Because that goes to onboarding, it goes to letting people go, it goes to soul dependency problems. And then, of course, you want rinse and repeat because you're a heck of a lot more efficient in those ways. So a lot of times, once you do that, and just from an internal perspective, you can refine a business, improve a business, professionalize a business, and you can get 10 to 15% growth just from doing that itself from a cost savings perspective in a lot of ways. And then sometimes you're squeezing out a little bit more revenue just from an efficiency perspective. And then you can get into organic growth opportunities. So is it new distribution channels, new pricing structures, new products? Are you maximizing what you're doing with your current client base? Because those are the easiest clients that you will ever get. Yeah, a lot of times the answer is no. I mean, if they talk to them, is there other products, is there other ways that they could service those clients that those clients would like to have, and they're not necessarily getting from them right now? And they're probably looking around going, where can I find this? And well, hey, I've already got you right here. We can do it.
I would say in general, the mindset of a family business owner a lot of times thinks about, having a conversation with someone like yourself and a plan for succession as the end of the road. And it's kind of, it's kind of almost fortuitous that this weekend is Rosh Hashanah, and it really talks about new beginnings, the beginning of a new year. And I think that's such a healthier way of looking at, this type of planning, whether it's succession planning, making a family asset, selling off to an outside business, passing it down for the next generations. I think there's a big upside to looking at it in a positive light as a new beginning, instead of like, this is the end of the road. It almost like, it almost gives it more energy and more awareness around everything. Because when people get to the end of the road, they start to care about things less and less. So I love your sentiment. I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't mention how we met. So both you and I belong to the networking group, TNG, which is a vetted community of professionals nationwide. You talk about vision for a moment. I'll give Michael Goldberg a quick shout out. He has been a guest on the show twice now. So shout out to Michael Goldberg, the founder of TNG, the networking group, and Knockout Networking. Speaker, trainer, coach, etc. But we talk about community, right? The vision of TNG, Jeremy, you've probably heard it a million times by now from Michael, is to have a local chapter, a local community in every city around the country that has a baseball team. I love baseball and softball. Michael loves baseball and softball, right? But especially with the pandemic a few years back at this point, at the beginning of the pandemic, that vision changed a little bit. And it did for a lot of people out there. But in the world that you walk around in and help these family run businesses, a lot of them might not even know what their vision is. Have you tripped across that, and how have you helped them kind of formalize what the vision is?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, sometimes this is an eye-opening journey, and it's more than less. It is. Once you get into these discussions, you formalize what the focus of it is, as opposed to, well, we built it, we had an idea, we monetized it, and it was grow was the plan. We'll figure the rest of the stuff out later. Unfortunately, you never figure the rest of stuff out later. So, I mean, okay, let's figure that stuff out. Let's clarify where you're trying to go and what the purpose and focus of this business actually is and what we're trying to build it into. Because to your point, everything needs to be adaptable. I mean, evolution is part of it, essentially. So what is this business going to morph into? And, just because it was built that way doesn't mean it's the exact, replica of what it needs to look like to get to that next level of growth. I mean, I talk to a lot of companies, and generally it's about family dynamics and transition planning, but growth or organic growth is a byproduct of that a lot of times. It's kind of a secondary conversation. Well, we tried to get from 50 to 100 million, and we kind of threw those plans aside because we couldn't be successful in those areas for whatever reason. And, a lot of times it's not being able to see the forest through the trees. But yeah, I mean, to get from those different ranges to grow just as we do as humans, you've got to evolve. So the business has to evolve too. And what you've done doesn't necessarily get you to that next level of success. And yeah, I mean, clarity, creating clarity in terms of how the family interacts with the business, what the business is there for, what its focus is, and what its long-term goals are. That is a conversation that a lot of times doesn't happen, or at least doesn't happen in detail enough, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of times it might be something that the business in question's even been avoiding for a while, because it seems like, and it indicates the end of the road, and it almost sounds like death to people. Which I have a saying that I've been throwing around a lot as of late. Most people would like to retire on their terms than be retired on someone else's terms, especially if that someone else is the Grim Reaper.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, these are journeys, but at the same time, life is a journey. I mean, you can utilize this asset that people have built or whatever. And to your point, don't look at it as an end. I mean, it's the next phase, basically. Right. So, right. What are you going to do with this business, and let it fund your life too? What are you going to do? Because it becomes their identity a lot of times. And that's one of the reasons they don't want to step away. They don't want to start having those discussions about it. Well, I hate to tell you, but transition is coming. And, if you're planning for it, it's going to work out a lot better than obviously if it sneaks up on you and some catastrophic health event or whatever happens, because honestly, that's usually what happens when somebody tells me they're going to die at their desk. I'm like, no, you're probably not. Something's going to happen well before that. And that's just the challenge. And your family's going to be scrambling to figure out where the keys to the front door are. So, and then that's, you need to create this just like a Fortune 500 would years and years before. So, what will take place when it needs to take place, essentially. And also it gives the owner an opportunity to start stepping out and figuring out what their next passion and chapter is going to look like. Yep. And I don't mean just going to play more golf. I mean, figuring out.
There's anything wrong with that. We like that. But Ralph Waldo Emerson and Aerosmith would agree, life's a journey, not a destination. But it is good to keep the destination in mind, beginning with the end in mind when you're talking about new beginnings. But remember that one is an effect of the other, the beginning and the destination. So if you look at it like it's the end of the road and death is near, that's what it'll feel like. If you look at it as I'm planning for a new beginning in the next phase of my life, that's what's going to happen. A lot of times it's a mindset thing. We got to take a break. We'll be right back with Jeremy Stevenson, founder at iBridge Global Partners. Stay with us.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be frank about health to advocate for all of us.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to Always Friday with me, Stephen Fry, your SMB guy. We are chatting with my friend from the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky. Met him via the internet during the pandemic. Jeremy Stevenson, founder at iBridge Global Partners. You're looking to balance business and family. You're looking at the right succession plan. You're looking at Jeremy Stevenson. He's the guy you got to talk to. So Jeremy, we were chatting a little bit towards the end of the last segment, just even about mindset, right? For business owners looking at things as a new beginning, which, I mentioned, I'm a Jewish guy, Rosh Hashanah, this is the weekend, a new beginning, new year starting up. I also want to give a shout out to my buddy, Rabbi Levi. I've had him on the show as well. Project Rosh, the program that they put together to entertain the kids. Thank God for you guys, so that we don't have to listen to them driving us crazy in Temple. But, this is a weekend where you spend a lot of time with family and you talk about new beginnings, the beginning of a new year. So Jeremy, this is the madness part of the show, the stories that we have from the field. And I feel like the conversation we were just having goes a long way to segue into this discussion. So being that we joke about bourbon a little bit here, I know it's a little early in the morning, but I'd like to quick cheers to you. I don't usually drink on the air, but that's not as good as the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, but best we could do for the Jersey Shore Trail, So this is the madness part of the show, Jeremy, the artistic observational part of what you do. Someone in your position has no doubt been exposed to a whole bunch of fun stories, how people have navigated through the pandemic, how they ultimately got to creating a family asset and a succession plan. No subject too taboo. We want to hear it all. If you don't want to compromise client confidentiality, don't worry, you don't have to. But we want to hear all the bonehead stories. So lay it on us. Give us some madness.
No, absolutely. I mean, you've seen everything, obviously, where, you're literally saying, I'm going to die at my desk. I've seen, siblings firing one another from shareholder agreement things, parents going to the hospital because, literally things, when you have family challenges and you think you do everything right and things turn up, then that causes friction within families. And guess who catches all the flack? It's generally going to be the previous generation who handed the business down. So, what does that do to them? Well, I mean, a couple of different hospital visits, near death experiences, all this good stuff, because, you thought you did everything right again. So but no, I mean, you get into scenarios where people are afraid to change what they inherited to some extent. So they're just driving a square peg into a round hole. So, I mean, I've done turnarounds into successions essentially. So, I mean, how do you stop the bleeding, to begin with? And that's where you step in that particular scenario, or creating a sellable asset. In other words, companies that want to position themselves for a sale because they're not planning on handing it down, whether they don't have any kids, whatever their desires are. I've had scenarios where, a company that had major clients, household names, essentially, and they were in the digital marketing research space, didn't want to increase headcount, but wanted to create a sellable asset and wanted to be able to scale our business. So how do you do that? Well, I mean, the long story short really is that we digitized her front end for the most part. So her clients had basically 365 trackable, traceable interaction with her team. That changed the relationship, as opposed to being project-based to being basically a trusted partner on all their marketing plans. So we changed their fee structure around from project-based to subscription-based. That obviously, and we were able to increase her fees by a double-digit amount percentage. And then you get into, okay, well, how are you going to scale this? Well, if you've got that particular efficiency, then, you're able to add 2 new clients or multiple new clients in that particular space. But yeah, no, I mean, and I think she's still carrying on with that particular company to be able to scale it. But, how do you, the different stories, you're going to hear all kinds of different things. Siblings fighting, essentially. How do you set it up? Because when you mix family and business, that is a cocktail waiting for a match a lot of times. And I mean, how do you become the mediator? I mean, honestly, it's taking the emotion out of the conversation. It seems so easy, and but a lot of times it's not. I mean, how do you get people that actually should love each other and skip down the road with one another holding hands, so to speak, to Christmas dinner or whatever, holiday? How do you get them there? And a lot of times it's literally common sense discussions of family first, business second. I mean, at the end of the day, this is your family. The business is an entity that the family operates and owns, but trying to actually separate those two is a really delicate dance a lot of times. That's why strong governance structure is part of kind of the first building blocks when you step into a lot of these businesses, because they don't, do they have a board? Do they have a family council? Do they need those? How are they going to interact with the business? How are they going to continue to solve conflicts? I mean, that's part of it essentially is how does the family get in and out of the business? What's the requirements for that? Do they get automatically the corner office? Is that the right idea? Probably not. And then of course, so it's almost two separate entities that you have to run. But yeah, you hear all kinds of scenarios that everything that you can imagine, I mean, in terms of drug addictions, people taking over that thought, have you asked your son or your daughter if they want the business? No, they just anticipate that they're going to get it because they're next in line. Well, they may want to be a doctor, or maybe they're a dumbass. I don't know exactly,
First of all, the name is Dumas. Okay. But you make a great point. I feel like in a lot of my travels, when you talk to some of these businesses and you mention words like corporate governance and human resources, the immediate response that you get is, oh, we don't need any of that. We're a family business. And I would, over the last 20 years, I got to a point where I would start laughing hysterically because I'd look at them and go, you do realize that 1 out of every 2 families ends up in divorce, right? Which, by the way, if that is an issue, you want to contact Frank LaRocca, Coach LaRocca from LHRGC, Matrimonial Law. Just quick plug for Coach Frank again. But that answer always used to drive me crazy. I'd be like, you know what? In a lot of cases that I see, you need it more than other places because the other places don't have as hard of a time taking the emotion out.
It's the people aspect and lack of transition planning that generally kills family businesses. And I mean, family enterprises, $500 million to whatever, $2 million or whatever. It's the people aspect and lack of transition planning. And I repeat that purposely because that literally is. I mean, if you look at the transition rates from first, second, third to fourth generation, I mean, they gradually go down and they go down significantly. You can think from third to fourth generation, the successful transition rate or percentage is 3%. That's 3%. And, but yet family business contribute 64% of the United States GDP. So, I mean, there's 25 million family business in the country. Now that's mom and pops to Chick-fil-A enterprise level. So, I mean, it spans the entire, category, but yeah, no, it's getting the people on the same page, because a lot of times if you put the wrong person in there, if the business is already in motion and certainly been, has some maturity, it has some credibility, it's known in the space, it may not scale, it may not grow to that next level of success or whatever. They may not be able to drive the boat. They may be a bad leader, but it's probably not going to falter from that 9 times out of 10 because they have a proven product, they have street cred and everything else. It's the people, like I said, the people aspect and the lack of handoff, anticipation and preparation.
Isn't that interesting how, we like to talk in terms of people first. I love that idea, but in certain circumstances, they could be kryptonite sometimes with the different personalities. And you brought up a good point, how a lot of the family businesses out there, it's like growing up, I remember tons of them, and I feel like there's still a big presence out there, but it's dwindling. And while that's happening, the amount of people who are going off on their own independently and consulting and just using technology and internet access to really create their own individual presences in the world is increasing, which is interesting to see. Like, I always think of things as you got to surround yourself with the right people, have a strategic partner team type of approach. And yet there are a lot of folks out there who are kind of mercenaries, lone wolves, if you will. And in some ways you could even be looked at that way in some of the work that you do consulting for businesses. But like, where do you find like the happy mix of the two, where like we can keep some of that small, medium-sized business spirit that is family oriented alive, especially with some of these kids that don't want to work anymore, a bunch of lazy bums?
Well, I mean, you got to pick the right successors essentially. And honestly, that's where creating a family asset comes into play a lot of times. I mean, it takes the family dynamic out of it to some extent, but yeah, I mean, how do you transition a business? How do you keep it in the family? And yeah, I mean, to your point about businesses or the decline of family business numbers, entrepreneurship is on the rise, but that doesn't mean family businesses essentially. And of course, that also doesn't mean that they're going to be successful 6 months from now. Essentially, you can say, I'm an entrepreneur, but have you created a successful business? Well, that's like the overnight success took 9 years and 363 days. And you just heard about it. And oh my goodness, they just did an IPO. They must be fantastic. No, they've been bleeding sweat and tears for the last 9 years, almost 10 years to get there. But yeah, I mean, it's building these businesses like a Fortune 500, like a corporate environment to some extent. That doesn't mean you can't retain the family nature and the family culture and the family environment and the friendliness and somewhat of lack of red tape in certain areas. But to your point earlier, systems, processes, governance, overseeing, long-term planning, driving a business by actually KPIs, key performance indicators, data-driven organizations, as opposed to the hip bone KPI, which a lot of family business owners use. They don't, they only, that finance wasn't their thing or whatever, and whatever teams they have, but they've got to actually interpret that and understand what that is into basically a deck that kind of shows what the heartbeat of the company's doing, just like a big corporation would. Because again, you can mend and you can mold both of them together essentially, but you've got to be willing to do that. And there is some pain and suffering along the way to do that.
Over the last 3 years, I've met and interviewed quite a number of succession planning specialists as well as just general business coaches. And I'm happy to say that in my travels as of late, more and more small, medium-sized businesses I encounter not only have a business coach for the business owners and leadership of the company, they have it in place for their employees too. And I feel like these days, quick shout out to Machen McDonald, who's been a guest on the show twice at this point, just a phenomenal business coach out of Northern California while I'm here in Central New Jersey. It gives me such a feeling of hope that, somebody who's not only invested in their success, their personal success as a small, medium-sized business owner, their family's success, but also their employees and their employees' families' success. I'll work with anybody out there that has a small, medium-sized business for the areas that I work with, but it feels so much better when they say my employees are the biggest asset. I want to make sure that they have everything that they need. And surprisingly, even from family businesses where the family's actually working in the business, I don't always hear that from them. Same with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes it's said and there's no meaning behind it essentially. And I think they mean it a lot of times. I mean, I'm not saying that some of them don't, but most of them do. But, whether or not they put that into action with a little bit of force behind it. And honestly, I mean, I've seen family businesses. I've worked with one not too long ago, essentially that, there's family dynamics going on. Well, that filters down into the business itself, essentially, because employees see that. And this planning, to your point, again, it's a long-term strategy essentially to build the business into whatever you're going to transition, because that freight train has left the station essentially and is headed in the right direction. You better get on board or it's going to come for you. But it creates clarity not only for the business, the family, the owner, but to your point, the employees and their families, because they rely on that for their job, their employment, their livelihood. They're probably not, independently wealthy. So they need a job. And honestly, culture will suffer if you don't actually try to do this planning essentially, because, when a family business gets long in the tooth, so to speak, and people can see that. And what's going to happen next? Are they going to sell it to X, Y, and Z company? Well, what is that X, Y, and Z company going to look like? When your employment starts to come in question, your livelihood starts to become in question, you start looking around for options, and you can lose some good talent in a heartbeat.
Without a doubt. I've seen some of that firsthand as of late, and it always kind of strikes me as a little funny that, chicken and the egg conversation, whatever you want to call it, is I feel like a lot of family businesses especially, they won't look to retain services of a business coach or a succession planning specialist until, again, it's kind of not too late, but later in the game than it should be, so that they can have the new beginnings and the actual start to their new life really the way that they want it. We got to take a quick break once again. Hold that thought, because I want to hear whatever brilliance is about to come out of your Harvard educated mouth. I love it. But we will be right back with Jeremy Stevenson, founder at iBridge Global Partners. He is the man to balance business and family. Stay with us, everybody.
What really drives success in business? Introducing Intangify, the show that explores the intangible assets that create value and growth. I'm Matthew Aspel, your host and an attorney focused on innovation. Join me Fridays at noon Eastern to discover how innovation, culture, and other intangibles shape thriving companies, from startups to established businesses. We'll share strategies to unleash your business's true potential. Tune in live on talkradio.nyc Fridays at noon Eastern and Intangify your business today.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to Always Friday with me, Stephen Fry, your SMB guy. We are chatting with Jeremy Stevenson, founder at iBridge Global Partners, balancing business and family. That's the name of his game. I have this picture behind me. It's like Kentucky bourbon. It's the best medicine. And, I can't help but think about this whole conversation. I'll take a quick, sip of my medicine. Cheers, l'chaim to you. L'chaim, l'shana tova. Happy New Year.
Stephen, as you know, I've done some posts on the health benefits of bourbon too. So just chime in there on your intro. But yeah, there is actually some health benefits. And, if you've ever been to Kentucky, allergies are terrible down here. I'll tell you right now, that is the best allergy medication.
Well, thank you for that, because my allergies have been terrible up here. And I have to mention, our engineer, Logan, puts into the chat just now, this is probably a good time to say that I've never actually tried bourbon, tried a lot of alcohols, but bourbon was never one of them. So I know who I need to take with me to the Kentucky Bourbon Trail to meet you in person, Jeremy. We'll try to make that happen. This is the message part of the show. The whole idea with Always Friday, from Weekend Insight to Monday Impact, we want to be able to leave people with the sound bites that they really need to hear and remember over the weekend while they're enjoying their bottle or two of bourbon, depending on how much medicine they need for the weekend. We want to make sure that they have something that they can take action on Monday. And just to kick it off, you talked before a little bit about like revenue goals that certain businesses have. And I speak a lot all the time about businesses being focused on some type of product and they forget about the people in the process. That's another one of those examples why it's really tough to gauge, set a goal that you have no idea about. It's just throwing a number at a dartboard. And I've seen that happen with new platforms that just sprang up a couple of months ago. They're like, we're going to have 250 million on this in 3 months. I was like, how? And, not that I'm a pessimist. I'm a big everything is possible type of guy, but give me your plan. And then they couldn't do it. That type of stuff is cause for alarm. But kind of like we were saying at the end of last segment, if it's not something that's revenue producing and helping the business grow year over year, like having a business coach, like having somebody who's at your side helping with potential succession planning for 3 to 5 to even 10 years down the road, they might not engage with that. And I always find that to be kind of backwards, is they spend so much time in their own world and in their business, and they're the only one who knows how to do it, and which is not really scalable anyway. And they tend to focus on products, widgets, apps, and whatever that they think are going to get them a massive revenue hit all at once, like a get rich quick scheme. And flat out, it doesn't work that way. But if you ask them about, have you done anything to train your people, motivate your people, help your people learn a little bit more, something they didn't know yesterday, might be like, yeah, I want to do that, but we just can't do it yet. We got to wait until we're on some good stable ground. It's like, haven't you thought along the way that if you can afford to keep the lights on and provide payroll and a retirement plan, you should probably train your people to be better people so they produce more money for you? But somehow it always gets lost.
Yeah, the old adage of the phrasing saying this is how it's always been done has killed more things than anything else. You're true to that. That is true. 50% of what I do is unlicensed therapy. Absolutely. You step in there
without a doubt.
It is. Absolutely. Because to your point, a lot of this centers around discussions. I call myself an advisor and strategist to family businesses, but your fingers have to inevitably get dirty. And to your point about creating a data-driven organization, that is a well-oiled machine that has systems and processes. It's not talk to Joe Bob or Jim Lowe or Jane Doe essentially to get that on the monthly basis. It's designed to replicate what the big corporations do. You're just doing it in a smaller fashion, and you can control the culture and all that stuff. You're not going to even notice it, but you're building into whatever that end goal is. But yeah, no, to your point, it's getting owners started a lot of times. I mean, yes, apps and ERP systems or technology and whatever else are not going to be silver bullets. They're just not. It's not going to happen. I mean, you have to take a holistic approach, and that's why when you mentioned early on, I mean, I always say owners need a life, business, retirement strategy, basically.
Yep.
And it takes different players to get them there. It takes a mini board of directors, as I usually rephrase it. So again, I'm good at getting families on the same page and focused and figuring out how to create governance structure so they know how to operate the business and everything's well defined. And then we can beef the business up. But, I mean, to your point too, where this businesses or the percentage of businesses or less and less family businesses, a lot of it is, because there's not enough assets outside of the business. So they have to sell the business. I mean, if I hear, I've got a successful business, I want to give it to my children. What can I do? And all my assets are tied to my business, by the way. Well, I guess it depends on if you're 30 or if you're 70, because unfortunately time does matter. And time is your best friend when it comes to investing and time horizons and certainly things like that. So part of the process is de-risking owners, or part of my process is anyway. That's why I partner with financial advisors, because we can create a bigger pot of gold. But what are you going to do with that? A lot of times, let's fund ancillary sorts of assets so that you're not solely dependent on one particular asset. You've got external assets. And if you do it right and you have enough time, you can do it with, you can pass the business down without selling it to your kids. So you're not burdening the next generation with that debt on there. And you're also de-risking your own self, basically, because you're not solely reliant on what the business is going to do. Because, let's face it, obviously, if the business is paying your retirement, then if there's a pandemic, to your point about COVID, if there's a recession, to whatever's going on now,
yep.
If the business doesn't continue to operate in good form, then I guess I hope you like eating peanut butter and jelly or not taking that 6-month cruise.
I love that you said, the most dangerous thing for businesses is this is the way that it's always been done. If you act as a strategic advisor, you partner with financial advisors, I do as well. The first disclosure a financial advisor makes a client sign is past performance is not indicative of future results. Most people know that. Very few actually embody that. And again, like hindsight, looking at it like it's in pen or carved in stone, like where a lot of times people know, especially if they're running a family business day in and day out, that a lot of things can be written in pencil. And that, think about it as a moving forward type of thing. But, a lot of times when they reflect back on their experience, they don't realize that that's what they were doing the whole way as they were learning and evolving. And they have to do some more learning and evolving to get to the ultimate plan at the end.
Well, I mean, you start out and you're running the company and you're learning the company, whatever it is. And, fast forward 30 years and you're still running the company, you're in the weeds every day. And the challenge is a lot of times letting go. I think to your point, essentially, I mean, empowering your leadership team to make decisions. I mean, I've sat in a number of boardrooms with owners that are owners of very successful businesses, hundreds of millions of dollars. And, if a decision has to be made, everybody looks to the owner, essentially, whether it's he, she, doesn't matter, essentially. But yeah, it's like, well, these people should be making those decisions. You should be overseeing the business and its trajectory, essentially. What's the long-term plan? And also utilizing it to live your life. I mean, part of it is finding out what you're going to do next. I mean, you've built this engine, use it, because you only get one life to live. So, I mean, you can continue to operate it, own it, oversee it, but figure out what you want to do outside of the business earlier, sooner than later, so that you don't have to spend every day of your life in there. Go enjoy your grandkids, go enjoy your hobbies, go enjoy life with your wife or your husband or whatever in travel. But you also can figure out what other endeavors you want to embark on.
Some folks have had so much trouble envisioning that because they've been working day in and day out of their business that it's hard for them to keep that as a focus and a priority. We got to wrap up, Jeremy. If you want to get in touch with Jeremy, if balancing business and family is important to you, 502-741-7852. That's the correct number?
It is.
Jay Stevenson at iBridgeGlobalPartners.com, JSTEVENSON, iBridgeGlobalPartners.com. Real quick, before we wrap this up, my favorite questions: who's your favorite movie or TV show character? What's your favorite movie or TV show? What's your favorite musical instrument? And who's the artist you'd like to hear play it? You gave me a common one that I get all the time for the favorite character, Andy Dufresne from Shawshank Redemption. I love the idea of you dealing with family dynamics, Jeremy, and your favorite favorite character from a movie is a guy who got convicted for killing his wife, that's before it gets to that point. You might want to call Jeremy. I'm just saying. But yeah, if your favorite movie rather, you said was Thomas Crown Affair, and you were very specific to say that it was the 1999 version, not the Steve McQueen version. Any particular reason for that?
No, honestly, whatever. I mean, people like different movies, different versions, so I just like that version better. I don't know why.
I like
Not
it.
to say anything bad about Steve McQueen. I like Steve McQueen. Love his cars, love his watches, and everything else.
For sure, love his cars, love his watches. As far as your favorite instrument, you said piano and guitar, which I play the piano. Have really had a hard time picking up the guitar over the years. I leave that to my dad. He's 76 and still loves to play every night. Your artist that you would like to see, you said you'd love to see Guns N' Roses, who I actually saw a couple of weeks back at the MetLife Stadium here in New Jersey. And you said you wouldn't say no to a ticket for Metallica either. So love it. I have not seen Metallica. I have seen Guns N' Roses at this point. Again, Jeremy, I've been looking forward to this for some time. I know you've been on a bunch of podcasts and shows. I really appreciate you coming by mine. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, Stephen. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Coming up next week, we're going to talk with my friend Chris Orlando, business development strategist and NFL alumni. Stay tuned for that one Friday next week, 11 a.m. Eastern time, right here on talkradio.nyc. Have a great weekend.